Oh.
There you go.
Oh.
There we go.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. Okay.
How is that for volume? Is that too loud?
How is this for volume? Does this work? A little loud.
Is it loud? I can't tell. Can you say?
Testing. I am continuing to test whether this is an appropriate volume or not. Is this an appropriate volume for speaking? This is more of me speaking. I can't tell whether this is the appropriate volume or not. If I was to chant, it would be louder than this.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Test?
We'll test your chant.
Oh, okay. Is that too loud, too soft?
Perfect. That's lovely.
Okay.
One more try.
One more try, all right? So right volume.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you for your talk this morning.
And this is...
Just testing, testing. It's okay? Okay. Well, a warm welcome to everyone who's joining us for an open house hosted by IMC's Asian Dharma Circle. And so I'm aware that there may be people who are seeing this on YouTube as well. A warm welcome there as well. And so we are going to start with just about 10 minutes of meditation, and to allow ourselves to ground and settle, and before we open to our event today. So we'll just sit quietly, and I will ring bell when we end. And so again, a warm welcome for everyone who's here attending this IMC's Asian Dharma Circle hosted open house event. And those who are online joining through YouTube, as well as those who are in person. And so happy to see some faces that Lilu and I've been seeing on Zoom. And now we get to see you all here in person. That's nice. I want to say a few words about today's open house event. So we don't have a long history, but we did start this last year, where our intention was to allow the Asian Sangha in IMC to meet with the broader IMC community in some way that may be meaningful and supportive of the overall community. And last year, we did this, and we also had our guest teacher and speaker joining us, Chen Xinghan, who shared a bit about her book and Being the Refuge. And we had a good time discussing the book and its relevance in our broader community. And she's here today, those who are online, and you will see her hopefully in the course of this event. And then today, we're so fortunate to be able to have Trent Walker here with us, who will be our guest teacher and guest speaker, who share a deep practice and history in the Asian Dharma scene. And today, Trent will be sharing his new book, as well as leading some chanting that is rich in the Asian Buddhist history. And so we'll be doing some chanting together and learning about the book. And the formal part of our gathering together will include some of these introductions and chanting together, as well as some chance to have interactive discussions for those who are here in person, and some question and answer time. And kind of we are exploring this together as a community. And we'll end the session around 2:30 Pacific time. And after that, the formal part of our session will close. And those who are here, you're welcome to join us for an optional gathering out in the parking lot of IMC, where we'll have time for some tea and some snacks, and so just kind of informal connecting. And so that will be happening out in the parking lot. And so with that, I'm going to pass it on to Li Lu.
Thank you, Ying. It's just such a pleasure to be here in person. There's kind of an energy in coming together that I'm really appreciating right now. And for those joining online, I'm just loving that this is happening here, but also happening in broader scale across the World Wide Web. I'll say a little bit now about our group, the IMC Asian Dharma Circle. I think it's been 2 years, maybe a little bit more, 3.5 years that we've been going for, and the group kind of just sort of happened to come together in a way. I think I had come to a point in my own Dharma practice where I almost accidentally started sitting with people of color sanghas and noticing how in those environments, something dropped away that I didn't know was there. Something relaxed that I hadn't been aware of that was a holding. And there was a wish that the benefits that I was receiving could continue for others and for myself. And so I wanted to see if IMC could have something like this, could offer something like this for practitioners. And fortunately, Ying was also happy to join and lead it. And so we sort of started this, and we've been going since the pandemic. And it's just been such a gift, actually, for my own practice and for all those who I've met who seem to have benefited a lot from this group as well. We meet twice a month on the second and fourth Sundays at this time, about 1 to 2:30 actually. And it's a usually pretty intimate but kind of casual group. We have some regular people. We have some people who come and they're new. And we offer a guided meditation and a short Dharma talk. And I think what's really rich is because it's a smaller group, there is a lot of time to ask questions and interact and kind of share of each other and connect in a way that's really rich, that I think has been very helpful for our own practices. So that's a little bit about Asian Dharma Circle at IMC, and we have this tradition. This is our second time of hosting this open house once a year, and it's a way to acknowledge that the boundaries of what is constituted as Asian, they're not, firm and hard, and that many of us have family members, friends. The practice of what is constituted as Asian Buddhism is also kind of porous. And to just explore and appreciate this together. So today we have Trent, and I'm so happy to have him coming to share a little bit more about chanting practice. In our group, there has been a lot of interest in kind of chanting as a practice, and I don't know if it's coming out of kind of growing up hearing chanting or just being in cultures that are more amenable to this practice, but wanting to share it and bring it to the whole community. And I'll say a little bit to formally introduce Trent. So Trent researches and teaches about Southeast Asian Buddhism literature and music. He is currently a postdoc fellow at the Ho Center for Buddhist Studies and lecturer in religious studies at Stanford University. And Trent received a BA in Religious Studies from Stanford and a PhD in Buddhist Studies from UC Berkeley, where his dissertation focused on Cambodian chanting manuscripts. And you can visit his website where there's lovely audio recordings of him chanting many of the pieces from his book. It's trentwalker.org, and I just feel like it's such a treat to be able to be here in person and hear you share about this work and just be able to be part of this like auditory experience. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ying. Thank you so much, Lilu, for inviting me here. It's such a pleasure to be here on this special day for the Asian Dharma Circle, on this, sounds like, second annual open house, and to see both new and familiar faces. So thank you for making this possible. I just wanted to say a few things about chanting, about the book that some of the translations I've put together in this packet are coming from, and how I came to this particular mode of practice and study. But mostly what I'd like to do in the time we have together is make time for us to chant. And that's what the packet here is for. It's just to allow us to sample and experience a couple of different types of chanting together. And many of you, I'm sure, have experienced a whole wide range of chanting styles, whether in your own practice or things that you grew up hearing or things that you've encountered in Buddhist practice or other kinds of practices in your life. And for that, I'm also grateful that Ying and Lilu will facilitate some reflection and discussion, both about sort of what we've experienced today and then also tying that into your lives and your practice more broadly. And thank you to everyone joining online as well. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'd like to begin just by passing around a few things, if that's okay. I don't have a PowerPoint, but I just want to give you a few images, if I may, and maybe we could pass them in different directions. So this one here that I'll pass around, this is one of my main teachers of chant, Gao Ran. I just wanted you to be able to see a picture of her when I speak of her. And this next one is of my other main teacher, Brum Ud. Just so you can see a picture of him. And I'll just pass this around as well, because you can see in this book some Cambodian banner paintings of scenes from the Buddhist life that are connected to some of the chants. So just so you have a sense of what might be happening visually in context with some of the chants. So I'll just pass those around. Maybe I'll keep passing things around. Is that okay? Can I pass these around too? These are just two examples of chanting books in the Cambodian language, or Khmer or Khmer. And I just, especially so you could see the covers show a scene of some of the ways this chanting, one of the particular styles of chanting that I'll talk about more, is used. My interest in Buddhism and Buddhist practice and music really grew up together. When I was in high school, I started to practice at a couple of different Buddhist centers in San Francisco, at Gold Mountain Monastery in Chinatown, and also at the San Francisco Zen Center. And in both of those contexts, I was drawn to silent meditation, but also to ritual and chanting practices in particular. I had also grown up here on the peninsula studying music, trumpet, voice, these kinds of things. So I was really curious about this interaction, this intersection between the Dharma, between the teachings of the Buddha, between the practices that we engage in, and sound. What might be happening at this intersection? And that drew me, after finishing high school, to go before going to college, to work for a year in Cambodia with an organization called Cambodian Living Arts, and doing research for them on this intersection between Buddhism and music. And through that organization, I became connected to the two teachers whose images I've passed around so you can see, Gao Ran and Brum Ud, who became my root teachers in the Cambodian Dharma song, or Tho Bot tradition, which is this particularly melodic style of chant that we'll get to explore together. And that experience, and then also studying chant in a monastic setting, I spent about half a year ordained temporarily as a novice in Cambodia, made me really curious both in my own practice and in my academic life to continue thinking about and trying to understand what's happening in this relationship between particular Buddhist teachings and ideas and the way they're lifted into music or sound or chant. if it's okay, I thought I might mix up the portion in which I'll say a little bit more about the Cambodian Dharma song tradition, but I would like for us to chant together a little bit first. Then we can get a feel of some chanting in our bodies. And I'd like to begin with a chant that actually isn't in your packet, but just something very, 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 very simple. And this is coming out of the Cambodian tradition, in which certain forms of meditation practice involve concentrating on syllables. These may be repeated silently, sometimes repeated aloud, and that's somewhere in between what we might think of chanting as a practice that takes place out loud and meditation as a practice that takes place silently. In the Cambodian Buddhist context, and this is similar in Thailand, Laos, other places as well, this Pali word bhavana, that we might think of as meaning mental cultivation or meditation, in many cases really refers to chant. I often chant done silently in this way. Here I would like to take these three syllables, mo, ah, and u. These are syllables that in the Cambodian tradition can stand in for the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. They're syllables that can stand in for the virtues of our mothers, our fathers, our teachers, and other kinds of symbolic meanings within the esoteric Theravada context. But for now, I'd just like for us to explore them as sounds. So, the syllables again are mo, ah, and u. And so, let's chant we'll begin with mo. And I invite you, I will start on a particular note. Don't feel you have to do that note. You can pick any one sound that feels comfortable for you in your vocal register. And then we'll just do that for one breath. Then we'll move on to ah. And then we'll move on to oo. So I'll start each of those and then you can join in. Just hold it for one breath. Then we'll pause, take another breath in, go on to the next syllable, and ending with oo. Make sense? Okay. Now let's do the same thing, but for each syllable, whenever you come to the end of your breath, just take a breath again and rejoin everyone else. So we'll continue on mo until I ring the bell. And then we'll pause, do ah, then we'll pause, and then do oo. Make sense? Mo. Mo. Now I'd like for us to continue that same approach to sound, but extend it to this first chant here on the top of page 1. As you might be aware, the Pali language is pronounced in many different ways, depending on the particular linguistic or cultural context in which it's used. So there is a so-called Indic or international pronunciation of Pali. It's similar to, not exactly the same as the Sri Lankan pronunciation. And for this first chant, it would be something like Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. And then there are also, depending on the phonetics of local languages, all kinds of other ways Pali might be pronounced. So for instance, in the Cambodian context, that same phrase is pronounced Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. So let's try this chant. One thing that I wanted to highlight here is in gray, those are the syllables that are longer, and the ones that aren't in gray, those are the syllables that are shorter. In many styles of chanting, that distinction between short and long syllables when chanting in Pali determines the rhythm of the chant. This isn't true in all styles, but in many styles, particularly in Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, to a less extent in Sri Lanka and Burma, but particularly in those three contexts, that distinction between short and long syllables determines the rhythm. And the long syllables are exactly twice the length of time as the short ones. So it leads to this rhythm of Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. So slowed down. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. So let's try that. We'll try it in this international pronunciation of Pali, Namo Buddhaya first. And then, like before, just breathe when you feel comfortable. And you don't have to breathe at the end of the phrase. So in some styles of chant, one might recite Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. But here, let's just continue without a breath there, but take a breath whenever you would like to, because we're chanting in a group, and then join back in wherever the group is. So, for instance, if I was chanting by myself in this way, I might go Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. Make sense? So let's try that all together. This simple phrase just means homage, namo, to the Buddha, Buddhaya. Namo Buddhaya, 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 Namo Buddhaya. Let's continue with that same style, but we'll add the Khmer pronunciation, just so you can feel what it's like to chant in a different pronunciation of Pali. So instead of Namo Buddhaya, we'll try Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. So let's just repeat each syllable first. Namo Buddhaya. Yeah, na, mo, but, tia, yeah. Great. So we'll do the same thing. And feel free to experiment with what pitch you're chanting on. It doesn't, in Cambodian styles of chanting that sounds monotone, sounds like each individual chanter is usually on one pitch. Generally speaking, in a group, people take on many different pitches, whatever is comfortable for them, and it creates this interesting layered kind of sound. So feel free to experiment. Namo Buddhaya, 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 Namo. Can I get a time check on how much? Yeah. Going. Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much. So let's do maybe just one more chant in this simple style of just chanting on one pitch, and then I'll transition and we'll explore some of this more melodic style of Cambodian chant. Of course, yeah.
just a curiosity, really,
Yeah.
in the top line where it has the Khmer script Pali, which
Yeah.
I can't read.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, it says that there are only 2 long syllables compared to the 3 below. Can you say about that?
Sure. So if you look at that second long syllable, you'll see that the second part of it looks a little complicated. So there are actually 2 syllables in there. In other words, the dha is written kind of below the but. So it's like namo buddha. Yeah. And many scripts that are used to write Pali have similar kinds of principles. So that's why it happens to look like that. Sure. So let's look at this second chant here that many of you might be familiar with. This one that in the international style of pronunciation would be Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Or in this Khmer style pronunciation, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Maybe we'll do it just in this international style, but just invite you to be aware of these other kinds of pronunciations. And often when this is chanted, the individual words might be separated with a pause. One might chant something like, Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. That would be one style. But let's try this other style where there's no break between words. And the only thing determining the rhythm is this difference between the long and short syllables. Here the long ones again are highlighted in gray. So we get this pattern of Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma, etc. So let's just do that once, altogether 3 times. Again, without a pause at the end. So altogether 3 times. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Thank you. So we can, if you'd like, and if we have time, we can explore more about different other chants in this, often in this monotone style. If you turn to the second page now, I just wanted to offer some other approaches to chant. So this distinction between long and short syllables and the rhythms behind that are one part of the aesthetic joy and beauty of chanting in Pali. So for instance, this one at the top, which is often used to recite prior to reciting Buddhist texts, to invite local spirits on earth and in the heavens to come listen to a recitation of Buddhist chanting. The pattern of these syllables repeats each line. And that's how poetry in Pali works. There's these patterns of short and long syllables that repeat each line. So this is a slightly more complicated pattern. But when in recitation, we can hear the pattern very clearly of Sagge kame charupe grisakaritate chandhalike vimane dipherate jagame tervanakehane gehavathu mikhete phuma jayantu deva chalathala visame yakhagandhapanaka tithanta santigeya murivara satavo me sunantu. So it creates, again, each line having this same kind of rhythmic pattern. But sometimes in a Cambodian context, it might be recited in that way, like Sanke kame jarupe kara sakar tade chandhali ke vimiane te perot he chakiame tarawana ke hane ke havat thom he te bhumya chayanto te vya chalathala visame yakha kwan thampaniakya tadhanta santhi ke yamone vara vachanan sathavo me sonanto. Or sometimes a melody would be applied to it. And it's these melodies that I was really drawn to in encountering this Cambodian Dharma song tradition. So I'll just give you one example of a melody of this, and then we'll turn to some of the other texts in this tradition via English translation. So one melody that could be used here, I'll just give you an excerpt of it, would be Sang kinh ca me charo pahin kere sekhare tade chandhali khe vimine Ti perot the chak me tarwana ke hane ke hawa thom heng he te. And when I first encountered this tradition through Brum Ud and Gao Ran, I was really curious about what's this relationship between the sound of the chants and the texts? What's happening in this relationship? And Gao Ran in particular really emphasized that some texts and the melodies that go with them are designed to bring about this experience of samvega. Samvega being this Pali word that means this experience of shaking or being stirred, particularly being stirred by the encounter with impermanence. So when Buddhist texts narrate the life of the Buddha and describe him leaving the palace and encountering the four sights of an old person, a sick person, a dead person, and a renunciate, this is the feeling or the experience that's described. And Samvega in this Cambodian tradition, as in elsewhere in Theravada Buddhist context, is sometimes paired with this experience of pasada. Pasada literally means this sinking down, or this just as a glass of muddied water. If it's allowed to sit, the mud will sink to the bottom and the top part becomes clear and bright. So it has this sense of clear, bright faith and clarity in the mind that can be paired with Samvega. So some other kinds of chants in their melodies and in their texts might be crafted to bring about this kind of experience. So if you turn to page 4 on your handout, this is a very simple melodic style chant. If it was that here would be chanted in Cambodian, in Khmer, in the language of Cambodia, would sound something like this. Som thawai bang kom prang sam put pra sa bam phot knong lo ka. And because our time is short, let's just try chanting. We'll just take one stanza of this and learn it in English together. And let's learn the fourth one, the one that says here, no joy equals that of peace. Nothing else can end suffering. Here in this world and beyond, peace is the cause of true joy. And I've made this little space in between the lines here so that each line is divided into a group of 4 syllables, then a group of 3 syllables. And in Cambodian chanting, not in Pali, but in Khmer, often or almost invariably, the melodies are structured based on a certain number of syllables for one part of the melody, a certain number of syllables for another part of the melody. Very analogous to when we're singing a song that has multiple verses, usually there's approximately the same number of syllables in each verse so that we can put the same words to that same melody. So the same practice is happening here. So let's just try this one. This one is one that's associated with this experience or this feeling tone of pasada, of clarity or bright faith. So I'll recite a short bit, and if you could repeat after me, that would be, then we can experience this one together. No joy equals, no joy equals that of peace, that of peace. Nothing else can, nothing else can, and suffering, suffering, here in this world, here in this world, and beyond, and beyond. Peace is the cause, peace is the cause of true joy, true joy. Let's try that one more time, but we'll just do it all together. I will chant along with you. Don't worry if you can't remember what the melody was. Just listen to those around you and we'll make our way through it. No joy equals that of peace. Nothing else can, and suffering here in this world and beyond. Peace is the cause of true joy. Let's just do one last one here. Let's just do the one on the next page. And I think we'll have time just to do this in call and response. And let's skip to the third stanza. This is one that's associated with Samvega. And the story here is this is recreating this moment after the Buddha has been born, and his mother is, in these texts, is described as dying 7 days after his birth. And this is Maya, Queen Mahamaya, offering her guidance to Mahabhajatapi Gautami, who, as the Buddha's aunt, takes care of the Buddha after Maya's death. So this is Maya's guidance then to Gautami. So if we just take the third stanza here, in Khmer this sounds something like Hành niên có tầm ai sải bao nàng ấy Saraya Yachao Cham. And so we'll apply a version of that same melody for this line, what can I do when we are born only to be destroyed, etc. What can I do? What can I do when we are born only to be destroyed, be destroyed, all humans and animals die and decay, by nature, by nature. Thank you. So I think we're going to transition now to have a chance to discuss and reflect. You're welcome to take a look at any of the other chants that we didn't get to. The other ones on like pages 5, 6, 7, 8, those are just examples of other ones in this Dharma song style. They have melodies of their own that might be recited for when someone is passing away, sometimes for a funeral, sometimes for the consecration of a Buddha image, sometimes just for a ceremony in gratitude for parents. So many different occasions. And the book that they're coming from, Until Nirvana's Time, this book just has more translations and essays that try to, for me, try to fulfill what my teachers, Promut and Gaoran, wanted to do, which was to share this particular Cambodian tradition with the world. First to Cambodian American communities, those particularly younger Cambodian Americans who are maybe more familiar with English than Khmer, so that they can access this part of their heritage and their tradition, but also for people who are not Cambodian but want to appreciate this particular window on the Dharma that's offered through the Cambodian Dharma song tradition. So thanks for your attention, and I'll turn it back over to the two of you.
Well, thank you so much, Trent. I feel like I could sit here and listen for a while and feel this. We have a chance to, for those who are here in person, to get into a small group of 3 or 4 to share a little bit about what this experience is. Chanting, listening to the sound of the chanting, and maybe what might have evoked in your heart, in your mind, in your bodies. And I would invite folks to mingle a bit. So maybe go to the people you may not know much at all, and we can spread out in the hall and maybe even outside on the deck if you like. We have about 10 minutes or so. And once you settle into a group, maybe just take a moment and to kind of collectively recognize that you're in a group, and find a way, whoever might wanted to start first, and then go around the circle and to say one thing at a time. So as we get together, we kind of also are learning from each other. And this is not a chance to comment about other people's experience, but really allow this to be something that we're sharing together, collectively sharing together, and receiving the gift of sharing. And so maybe we can just stand up and form the groups. And for those who don't find the groups, maybe you can come to the center of the hall and we'll find you a group. Thank you.
Can I be part of the group? Yes, please. All right.
somehow it wasn't.
Test, test. Oops. Test, 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 test. Test, test. There.
Okay, so we'll try that one. So welcome back. I hope you all had a good small group experience. We'd like to just take a few moments now to share with the larger group if there's anything from your small group that, you know, that felt important for you or kind of resonated for you that you would like to share now with the rest of us. I think Ying, Trent, and I had a little group of ourselves, and it was just wonderful to hear each of our experiences and to share that. I think the richness of this chanting really comes forth in the individual experiences. So we'd like to hear from you.
It was a very rich and moving sharing. I'll just say one thing that really came clear was how much depth and richness and dimension as a Buddhist practice this has. The mindfulness, concentration, heart practices, all of it. So that's just one small piece.
Thank you for that. I think in our group, there is just so much attention that could be paid to all the experiences within our bodies and in the group, interacting individually and with the group. And yeah, for me, it was where the chanting was coming from, like in my belly, and noticing that this wasn't something I could do half-heartedly, that it really called for a full engagement, especially in a group live. Felt very used Samvega and Pasada, and I think I felt qualities of that in the experience of chanting together. We also remarked this about the space, how it felt to be doing it in this space. It's very special. Any other comments? Anyone want to share anything else?
I'm just accustomed to hearing the monotonic chanting, which I think we talked about in our group. Seems very. It's kind of conducive to a meditative state, right? It's a very kind of calming. Whereas the melodic is so evocative of emotion and devotion, which I really loved. And I was really curious about the different sounds or the different quality of the melodies. I mean, early on in the chanting, it sounded to me, I mean, not that I'm very well versed in any kind of world music, but it sounded a little like Pacific Island or like even Hawaiian. And then I heard, then later on, it almost sounded like Gregorian chants. And I was just so curious about, where all that, I mean, they're so different. I was just interested in learning more about that.
Thank you. So the melodic chants within the Cambodian context are often following the musical theory and practices of broader Khmer secular music as well. And so the scales, that is the musical notes that are being used, are ones that we might see in other kinds of Cambodian musical contexts as well. And those, like any kind of musical tradition in the world, it's always in conversation with other musical traditions. So, and then there's also just all kinds of parallels, whether it's the particular notes that are used or the vocal technique that we might see between vocal traditions that are geographically quite separate from one another. So just to give a specific example for your question, the second chant we did, the second melodic one we did, Maya's Guidance for Go To Me on page 5, I put, this is not meaningful for everyone, but for those for whom this Western musical theory context is meaningful, I just put the imagining C as the fundamental pitch and putting out the other notes in the scale in relation to that pitch. And the particular scale that ends up being used is something like and this scale is quite, there are other musical traditions that use that scale, but it's one that's very particular to Cambodian music as well. And sometimes when people are chanting in a Cambodian temple, say here in the United States, people are chanting together, they have different natural vocal ranges. Sometimes people will end up settling on particular notes of that scale just in the monotone chanting because it fits within music that people might be familiar with. And so that someone with a lower voice might settle on a note like ah, and someone might settle on a note like ah, something like that. Just not consciously, but just as an expression of this connection between musical traditions outside of a particular Buddhist tradition and within that.
Maybe we have time for one more question or comment. Did you want those? Okay, Amy.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here and offering this this session. I was attending online. I just got here, but I basically was listening and participating. I've had the opportunity to actually stay in different kinds of Buddhist monasteries, including Thich Nhat Hanh's Zen monasteries, and the style of chanting there is very melodious, like this. I've also stayed in Sri Lankan monasteries and Thai forest monasteries, and something that I really miss when I kind of started practicing more in this tradition, the insight meditation tradition, was that there isn't really much chanting, and I was wondering why. Like, you guys don't have to answer, but it's kind of like a question for IMC leadership and IMC teachers, like, why is chanting kind of almost intentionally left out? That's what it feels like. Because I actually feel kind of sad about it. I feel quite sad about it because I feel there's so much, there's so many functions and purposes to chanting. Like, first of all, as someone mentioned, it evokes this quality of devotion for me. especially as I go along the practice. And also, it's a way to memorize the teachings. The Metta Sutta, the Mangala Sutta has a lot of important teachings. And in the monasteries, when we chanted it on the full moon and new moon nights, I mean, it's a way to kind of reaffirm community too, a sense of building community and strengthening the bonds within the community. So that's my question. It's not, you don't have to answer, but like, why is it left out?
Could I ask a question back to you? I don't have an answer to this question, but I'm curious, since you, because of all your experience in encountering and participating in chanting in different settings, are there certain kinds of settings, say at IMC or other centers you may participate in, where you would like to see more chanting, and if so, what kind? I'm just trying to imagine what might be most meaningful or important to you.
Yeah, I think the most meaningful would be like, at certain dates that are very significant in the Buddhist calendar, like for example, Vesak, or something like that. But also just like, Sunday mornings are the most attended events. Just including something simple, like what was it, the Reflections on Universal Well-Being, that's in the Thai forest tradition, or, it's something that people can even take home with them and practice on their own. And anyway, just ideas. I mean, there's no, events of significance, but also just something like a regular, something regularly done, maybe once a week, once a month even, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think, how about now? Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought this up, Amy, and I'm hoping that this event today can kind of stimulate that for us and maybe allow us to begin reflecting and discussing whether this is something we'd like to and can offer here. I myself also feel that I would benefit from some sort of regular chanting practice done at IMC, so we'll look into it. And I'm glad this event actually is stimulating these kinds of conversations as IMC is reopening and we're having more and more in-person events. The other thing I really appreciate about chanting is that it's in the moment, in person, is so rich in those qualities. So we're almost at the end of our formal time together, and I want to again thank Trent Walker for all that you bring and are sharing and from this lineage and what you've spent time studying and really refining so that you can keep this tradition alive. And I also want to recognize Tenshin Khan here, who has a new book, One Long Listening. So if any of you want to check that out, Conversations in Chaplaincy. I don't think I got the subtitle quite right, but and I'd like to invite her to come up here, and Trent and Tenshin are going to help us close with a dedication of merit. So thank you.
So if you could turn to page 2 in your handout, and then there's this dedication of merit chant. This is just a translation of a vernacular Khmer language chant. That chant goes something like Dai Diak Nyom Sang Azamat Song Ang Ang Kai Hua Cha Som Sok So Pia Paru Pai Tu Kha, etc. And we'll do a similar melody in English, something like, let's try to find a pitch that's good for you. Maybe you could start us off.
May all I've done with care and craft, both words and acts, help me find bliss, shake off distress, and cross to reach Nirvana shore.
So, just as an example, and we'll do it all together now. So that with that same rhythm of essentially short, 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 long, short, 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 long. For each of there's 7 short lines per stanza. And so we'll do it from the beginning to the end. Again, don't feel you need to be wedded to the notes that we're starting on. And you can find what feels most resonant and true to your particular embodiment at this moment. So may we dedicate this merit of being here together, of practicing chant together to for all beings, and then also for exactly how it's expressed here in the chant we'll do together. Thank you.
May all life done with care and craft, both words and acts, help me find bliss, shake off distress, and cross to reach nirvana's shore. In every life may I give alms and hold precepts. May all my vows be soon realized, my boons, my bridge to realms supreme. I share the fruits of my merit with my parents, my preceptors, my wise teachers, and all my kin, gone and to come. May my forebears, no matter where they now reside, share in the joy of my blessings. May they find peace, free from all pain. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And this concludes our formal session of the program. And thank you for those who joined us online. And we hope you join us soon in some other ways. And so those of you who are here in person would like to hang out afterwards. Please, we have some snacks on the counter and their tea. And feel free to grab something. If you would like to get a chair to sit out, feel free. We will open the cabinet for those who don't know to get a chair. And we'll go to the back door, go through the back door, and we'll be out in the parking lot. And those who have burning questions for Trent and Chenxing, feel free to ask questions around in the parking lot as well. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming.